So welcome to Embodied Boundaries. It certainly is, it's one thing to really understand what boundaries are theoretically, but it is an entirely different thing to actually embody it. And so just a little bit about myself. If you don't know me, my name is Eleftheria, and it means liberty or freedom. And in essence, this is really what I stand for, is the liberation of the sacred feminine within us all. And these are just a few pictures of my super happy place. And this is when we gather with women in nature, in sacred space, and really just do all of the amazing heart work that's available to all of us. And there's something super, super magical that happens when women gather together. So I was born and raised in South Africa and now living in magical, beautiful Slovenia. And I've had a deep privilege to work with women's personal and professional journeys for the last 20 years. And every single story has really touched me deeply and really contributed to my own sense of place and purpose and power. And so my work as a transformational counselor, coach, or mentor is a marriage between my training or background in clinical psychology, and then I marry that also with women's spirituality. Super passionate about myth and story as healing tools, and to weave this kind of ancestral archetype into my seminars, my group trainings, my individual sessions, and to guide us all through this heroine's journey of life. The one golden key that I've worked with time and time again with women has been boundaries. Women struggle with boundaries. And so eventually I decided to create a training specifically just on boundaries for women. So this is what we're going to be covering today. The reasons women struggle with boundaries and the nervous system. And then the extra magical aspect that I'm bringing to my boundary program is the menstrual cycle and how to use this beautiful menstrual cycle that you have to set boundaries. Then we're going to do gratitude. And then if you'll allow me to, I'm going to just share with you my upcoming boundary baseline program, what that's all about. So boundaries essentially is an invitation and an intention to create psychological, physical, emotional, and energetic safety. And here, I wanted to invite our inner child, our really playful inner child, to see respecting the bubble. So there's a beautiful, beautiful Cherokee proverb. And before I read this to us, in a way, I want to invite you to consider that we are essentially, our psyche is a marriage between the divine feminine and the divine masculine in marriage. And it is the divine masculine principle which creates a container, the container for the divine feminine to feel safe. And until you've established this within yourself, creating this safe container for yourself, which we do through boundaries, the divine feminine will never feel safe enough to fully express and unfurl and blossom and flourish through you. So a way in which we can express this is through this beautiful Cherokee proverb, which reads, "A woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul, as to unite him with source. Her lowest calling is to seduce, separating man from his soul and leave him aimlessly wandering. A man's highest calling is to protect woman, so she's free to walk the earth unharmed. Man's lowest calling is to ambush and force his way into the life of a woman." in a way, I want you to just think about that in terms of how your masculine and feminine interact with one another. Oftentimes, there's a conflict between the rational and logic and intuition and mystery. Reasons women struggle to set and maintain boundaries. The first reason I think is pretty obvious is that there's been a lot of social conditioning. If we think about how little girls and little boys are raised, very often from traditional, generational textbooks that get handed down with parenting or just social and cultural conditioning, little girls are very often taught to never say no, to be nice, to be kind, to be people pleasing. So they're taught from very young to just say yes to everything. Little boys are, this is a generalization, but they generally really know how to say no. They can say no to anything. And so from very young, there's this deep conditioning in terms of people pleasing with women, and that little boys have the right to kind of like say no to things. And often I say to parents, from young is when we look at these two children that are raised in these two different ways, now imagine them at 16 at the back of a car getting intimate. What's going to happen? It's not going to play out in a very good way. So for many women, especially mothers, boundaries are essential for mental, emotional, and physical well-being. When we don't establish these boundaries in our personal and professional lives, we'll end up taking on too much, neglecting our own needs, and inevitably that leads to burnout. So when it comes to social conditioning, there's also a lot of guilt that we normally feel. So women will often say to me, when I set boundaries, I feel guilty. Either they feel like a lot of women will say to me, I feel like an absolute bitch if I say no to something, or there's shame involved. And in many ways, we've been conditioned to be the caregivers, the caretakers. So we take on responsibility for everybody else's well-being, everybody else's emotional state, everybody else's holiday. I'm going to make sure that everybody else has a fantastic holiday. But after the holiday, I feel like I need a holiday from the holiday because I've taken care of everybody else first. So in those ways, we conditioned to not look out for our own needs first. It also goes a little bit deeper in terms of there's a primal coding in a way where, which this leads into the next one, which is fear of conflict. So in many ways, the primal fear around setting boundaries and saying no or yes to something with women specifically is around safety, in terms of either physical or financial safety. So if we'd said no, maybe we were relying on income from the husband or protection from the husband, and this would set us up for an unsafe situation. And so very often what we do with that fear of conflict is procrastinate. And so very often a boundary will be contravened and you'll think, I'm not quite sure how to deal with this, and this taps into the nervous system. We'll connect with that just now, and I'll just put off this conversation until the next time that boundary is contravened, or if it gets worse, that's when I'll talk about it. Or so we procrastinate discussing and setting boundaries or having that hard conversation. Also, fear of conflict can really come from experiences from childhood. If you had seen parents not displaying good conflict resolution skills, this was really not handed to us. And in our day and age now, we've got the capacity to learn them, but it may be internalized for you depending on how your caregivers dealt with it. And if there was any aggression around it, you may feel, or you may already have a built-in nervous system response specifically to to fear of conflict. I certainly had that and had to really work with my nervous system around that, to not go into a reaction with any conflict. And so we can blur any conflict in terms of what we've experienced before. Then there's also the fear of not belonging. On a deeper level, women sometimes fear the fear of rejection and abandonment. And so therefore we start people pleasing. And then there is also the superwoman syndrome. I really see this a lot with Slovenian women, but also with South African women, is not asking for any help, that we need to do it all by ourselves. We know that we're capable of many, many different things, but the important thing is to know that we can ask for help and ask for our needs to be met. So we don't have to do everything. We don't have to grow the food and raise the children and have a career and be a great partner and do all of these things. So I'm interested to know which one resonates most for you. And if you can drop that into the chat, that would be super interesting. Right, so we have Superwoman, yes. I resonate with that too. Fear of conflict, yes, absolutely. All of them, yes. Jackpots. What else do we have? Fear of conflict is still most present, so the woman comes second, right? Fear of not belonging, yes, yes. These are such powerful ones. Okay. Boundaries and the nervous system. So ultimately, what happens is our nervous system responds to a trigger. And it's always, the nervous system is seeking safety, right? And so when any boundary gets contravened, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, very often, even automatically, there is a response to it. And if you're in touch with your emotions, normally that emotion is anger that comes up, but very often we don't even know why we're angry, what it's about. And this is the way that our emotions also really serve us. Yeah. The emotional body of a woman is really your superpower. We just have to learn how to really honor our emotional bodies. So there will be a trigger, and that trigger almost automatically triggers the I'm not safe response. And then your sympathetic nervous system will automatically respond. And most of us will know fight, flight, or freeze. And this is really a primal response to keeping us safe. It's primal, it comes from our primal brain. This comes from the days when we were running away from lions and you were actually in physical danger and your body needed to kick in to either fight, flight, or freeze. Now, there's three others that we don't often talk about, but for me, what I've observed with women is these three other automatic responses to stress is normally where women go: flood, fawn, and fatigue. Flood is when your body actually goes into absolute overwhelm and you don't know how to handle the situation. And you're flooded with emotions and you go into overwhelm. Fawn is kind of what you see when a squirrel runs across the road and a car comes screeching up to it and the squirrel just freezes and plays dead. It just stops. And so that is, sorry, no, that's freeze. Let me rephrase. Fawn is what happens when you are confronted with something and your immediate response is to submit. You just go, okay, yes. So that I really see with women as well. And then there's fatigue. And fatigue you often see with children, where a situation is too overwhelming or too stressful and they'll just go to sleep. And I often see this with women as well, especially in counseling, when you really start hitting home on the real deep truths. Some women will just shut down and they'll actually just get tired. Or even if you're in a conflictual situation, you'll just, your body just shuts down and you get exhausted, and it's your body just wants to close in and rest. Okay, so those are the automatic responses to triggers, and the triggers will always come up when any boundaries are not being seen to. Then we have the other part of the nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is connected to the vagus nerve. And only recently have we started hearing a lot about the vagus nerve, but again, it's been ancient knowledge. Yoga, we have a yoga practitioner with us. Yoga has, for 5,000 years, been teaching us different ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. And so it's another word for the parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest state, because it is connected to heartbeat, breath, and the digestive system. So another amazing thing about the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is why we want to learn how to switch it on and how to stimulate it and how to be with it, is that some amazing research has been done by Dr. Lisa Rankin, but also a lot of other doctors that have looked at spontaneous healing. And when spontaneous healing in the body happens, it's when the parasympathetic nervous system has been switched on. So let's follow the track with the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the electrical signals between your brain and your body, affecting breathing, heart rate, and digestion. And so how do we activate this? And so the obvious, simple answer is slow breathing, just slowing down that breath. The problem is when we're in fight, flight, freeze, flood, fawn, or fatigue state, is the first thing we do is it's fear state, right? And so we shut down, we hold our breath. And what happens also is it's almost like your brain goes into an amygdala hijack. So it's the primal part of the brain that gets switched on. And your job then, in that moment, you forget everything you know. When I've been in panic, I've got all the tools to deal with it. But when my primal brain is switched on, I forget to breathe, right? And so what's valuable is to have a little reminder for yourself somewhere. Maybe you create a beautiful creative chart that says, when I'm in struggle, breathe, take the rescue remedy, lay on the floor with your back, just feeling supported, so that you can switch on the neurofrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that then starts looking at the situation from a different perspective. It starts balancing out what is the real threat? Is it a real threat? Is it not a real threat? What is it that's triggering me? And you can start regulating. So slowing down the breath, things like rescue remedy really helps. Meditation. We're wanting to really just work with the breathing, the heart rate, and the digestion of the body. Forest bathing. Go for a walk in the forest. Mother Nature has given us this incredible healing frequency and vibration. It's just go for a walk in nature and use all of your senses to experience it. Don't go with a friend and talk, because talking about it will just activate more of the stress responses. But just be held in nature. Sense, smell, hear, touch, and taste. Then some very interesting research is that singing and chanting is also deeply beneficial to activate the vagus nerve, where especially when people are singing in choirs or singing a mantra or humming to yourself, starts activating. It's the voice, the sound that activates the vagus nerve from the back here. So that's another way. And this is why I think in many ways, automatically, we will start humming, especially if you see children trying to self-soothe, they'll start humming, or a mother comforting a child will start humming and singing. Then, of course, number one is practicing your boundaries. That's the best way to really also activate the vagus nerve, is to have very clear boundaries, which creates that safety for yourself and knowing how to communicate it effectively. So, for example, if you're having a boundary that's been contravened and you know exactly how to communicate, how to set that boundary, how to deal with conflict in a constructive way, your body may go automatically into the fight, flight, freeze response, but immediately you know, oh, it's this boundary. I know exactly how to deal with this. I know exactly how to communicate it, and I know what I'm standing for and why. And I also know my blind spot and what my boundary story is. So just a short little note, if you or somebody else is in fight, flight, or freeze response, normally people will say, calm down. And that's like asking somebody to not see or focus on the white elephant in the room. That's all you think about. Rather say, breathe, just breathe. And a very easy way of breathing is the box breath. And the box breath, which we can practice now, is very simply focusing on 4, 4, 4. So we're going to start by just exhaling out all the air in your lungs. And then we breathe in through our nose, closing the eyes, getting in touch with the body. For the count of 4, then hold that breath for 4 counts. And then exhale out for the count of 4. And as you're just following your own breath, we're going to do this 2 more times. So breathing in for the count of 4. Holding that breath for the count of 4. Exhaling out. 2, 3, 4. In breath for 4. 2, 3, 4. Holding the breath for 4. 2, 3, 4. Exhaling out. 2, 3, 4. Now just notice how different your body feels. Notice your resting heart state as it slowed down a little bit. And what's also quite powerful in this practice is to place your hand on your heart. This is a little bit of heart math. The heart's electrical magnetic field is 5,000 times stronger than the brain. And so when we're placing our hand on our heart, and we can really communicate with it clearly in that way. And I want you to just try this. As you close your eyes and just feel your heart, just silently say, or say loud, I am at ease. I am at ease. feel how your body responds to that. You let me know in the chat box if you felt a difference there. Hmm. And gently start opening your eyes. Back. I'll be saying it allows you to feel and understand what you need in the moment. Yes, yes. Well, sharing, I feel more relaxed and also more present. Absolutely. It's amazing how when we're connecting with the heart and really actually touching it and communicating with it by using the I am statement, how the body really responds to this. Calm, yes, yes, calmness, absolutely. And so this is simple, really easy, quick shift practices that we can use when we've been triggered. It's just remembering that. So remember when you have your emergency SOS guide that you put somewhere, put in heart, breathe, heart, I am safe, or I am at ease. Quick, simple practices. Doesn't have to be complicated. Okay, the embodiment of boundaries. So many writers have shared that the longest journey we'll ever take is the one from our head to our heart. And again, in many ways, this is because we really have been conditioned to live from the neck upwards, right? And so all of our energy flows into the cerebral, into thinking, into valuing only rational, logical. It's a very hyper masculine way, which we've been rewarded for and trained in. And so it's not your fault if that's your default to go there. But what this does is only focuses on the mental body, and we can have knowledge, but the embodiment is in the bottom of the iceberg, which is your emotional body, physical body, your energetic body, and all the other subtle bodies. And this is the realm also of the feminine. And so it's about really taking that cerebral energy and focusing it inwards and downwards and really experiencing this beautiful body tempo as an expression of the incredible environment of this planet. I always call my body a little piece of Gaia. It's made up of all the same stuff, and it also has the same magic, magnetism, and wonder that the forest gives us. So in a way, it's forest bathing, but going into the inner world. And so I want to invite you into this practice. And I would like for you to, we're just going to do a little introduction to this practice, but I want to invite you into thinking about a boundary that you have a challenge with at the moment. And so just bring to mind any boundaries that you're struggling with right now, anything that you're struggling to communicate or ask for your needs to be met, any situation, any person specifically, just bring that to mind. Now I'd like to invite you to, once you have that clear in your mind, to just close your eyes, turn your gaze inwards, and we're going to just feel our feet planted on the floor. Just feel the clothes on your body. And perhaps you want to use your breath to just become fully present in this little piece of Gaia, this beautiful body. And I want you to start scanning your body. And we're looking and exploring curiously inside the body any signals related to this boundary block of challenge you're having at this time. Where in your body are you experiencing this challenge with this bound? And some part of your body will be signaling to you. I want you to just move your awareness to that part of your body. And I really invite your senses, the sense body, to experience what is there. Maybe a word, maybe a color, maybe a visual, a memory. And without analyzing or fixing it or rescuing it, just bring presence to it. And perhaps it's fear of conflict. Maybe it's the fear of rejection. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's slight irritation. And I want you to just invite that part of your body to start moving. If you had to move that part of your body, it may be subtle movement, to move as that part. Just bring movement and space to it. Bring some breath to that part of your body. Breathing into that space. Just observe what happens. And then if this part of your body maybe has a sound it. Did it exhale? Did it allow it to express itself? Give it a voice. Open that beautiful sacred part of yours, like a blooming flower, sending compassionate, loving kindness to this part of your body that has spoken to you. Just take a deep grounding breath in. Exhaling out that breath through the mouth. Becoming fully present with every cell, every bone, every muscle, every organ, and every space in between. Just awakening the juicy aliveness of this amazing body that you get to inhabit. And when you're ready, you're just going to gently start opening your eyes. And if it feels okay for you to share, please share with us, either with a microphone on, or if you want to chat leave a message in the chat box. How was that experience for you? Expansion, yes, fantastic, thank you. This is what happens with an embodiment, is it just expands and moves through the body. Empowered, beautiful, wonderful, sense of empowerment as we really, every part of us really just wants to be heard, seen, celebrated, and acknowledged. Present. Beautiful. Renewed awareness and a deep release of overwhelm and pressure. Awesome. Awesome. So very often we're so scared to really face those parts of us because we think it's going to create further overwhelm or further pressure. But actually giving it spaciousness with awareness, it really expands and releases for us. Bringing my awareness to this boundary I'm not setting. I got really activated about it, feeling frustrated. Yes, okay. So the part of you that feels that it's really important to set that boundary is calling for your attention. It's saying, pay attention to this. Unblocked. Beautiful. So now there's a flow. Wonderful. And that is the intention of embodiment practice, is to get back into the feminine body and helping it to flow, to get to these wonderful answers and clarity, which sometimes if we're just in the top part of our head, we go into analysis paralysis and we can get stuck in the story why. And we then don't experience the expansion and the release. Okay. Right. So boundaries and the menstrual cycle. How do we tap into this amazing body that goes through 4 seasons in 28 to 32 days? And if you're in menopause or if you've entered perimenopause like me and the cycle is no longer the cycle, I have got an answer for you. But first, there's a beautiful indigenous wisdom saying about the menstrual cycle, which says, at her first bleeding, a woman meets her power. During her bleeding years, she practices it. At menopause, she becomes it. And so to just remind us of the fact that your body goes through 4 seasons in 1 month: winter, summer, spring. I want to share this 2-minute video that shows you that you're 4 different women in 1 month. Okay, so that just reminds us of the journey of a full month. So what's important about this is also for when many women don't track their period cycle. I know for many years I didn't know when, what, how it all worked until I really started honoring it and working with it. So also imagine at work and in partnerships, if your partner doesn't know where you are in your cycle and may ask during PMS whether you're being all crabby and stuff like, or are you on your period? That's just going to blow you up. But if we understand each other's cycle, people we collaborate with or where they're at, we know when to have the tough conversations. We know when to ask for what we need. So from day 1 to day 5, this is winter, death. Yes. And we don't know where we are in our cycle exactly. So we don't know if we're like acting from winter, summer, spring, autumn, and then we can't flow with the cycle of life. And what happens is we start pushing up against nature instead of flowing with nature. So in the first day 1 to day 5, when we're in winter, this is the wise woman. We slow down, we quiet, it's inward reflection. But you are at your most intuitive. And so often when I've worked with women in corporate, I've asked them, and a few actually took me up on this challenge, when I've said, put a calendar, your period calendar on your door and kind of say to people from day 1 to 5, I don't want to hear about any problems. Don't come to me. Or in the premenstrual phase, day 23 to 29, don't come to me with problems. And a few took me up on this, and it started really working well in the office. People started, engaging with it, and things started flowing a lot better. So during menses, we are our most psychic, our most intuitive, and if you can, Plan your schedule around that, to be quiet, to be inward, to be in winter, to go into retreats and to journal. And then in the next phase, the pre-ovulation phase, this is like creative energy starts coming up. It's a time to be a little bit more active and social and playful and driven. This is when creativity is juicy. So when you're really wanting to tap into starting to activate a creative project or a new thing that you're birthing, this is the time to do it. Then in the next phase, ovulation, this is adventurous. This is your extroverted self. This is when you're playful, sensual, and this is when you are your most powerful at manifesting. So if you're keen to manifest anything in your life, this is the time to kind of really start focusing on that and using that energy. It's summer, it is sexuality, which means your magnetism is great. Then in day 23 to 29, when you're premenstrual, this is the wild woman archetype. This is autumn. This is where there's ideas of learning and stillness. You start slowing down to start preparing to receive all the intuitive wisdom for menstruation in your winter phase. So how do we honor the cycle with boundaries? And also here for women who are in menopause or in premenopause, where I never know when my period's going to come, or if you've had a hysterectomy, you can follow the moon cycle, because ultimately the moon really affects our tides. We're 80% water. The moon really affects bodies of water, and we're a body of water. And so if you can remember when you had your cycle, women generally either will bleed on the new moon or the full moon. For our purposes today, I've set it to the new moon. But if you can remember where your cycle was, follow that cycle. So in new moon, menstruation, this is when you say no. This is when you conserve energy. This is when, if there's lots of social activities and you end up people pleasing because you're not sticking to your own personal boundaries, you'll go, it won't be enjoyable. You may get into conflicts and misunderstandings, and it's not really serving you. You're highly intuitive, and this is where you start preparing for kind of actions to be taken. The next phase is the waxing moon. So the moon is starting to grow. This is when you say yes. You're normally quite enthusiastic because all of the estrogen is starting to build in the body. Don't overpromise anything. Normally when we're super enthusiastic, when we're feeling better after the menses period, we can overpromise. Don't overpromise. Set boundaries for creative flow. Set up creative space for yourself. Time and space or activities that really helps to get those creative juices flowing. So you begin taking action in the stage, initiating creative projects. Then we get to full moon, and full moon is ovulation. If you want to ask for a raise, if you want to ask a difficult question, if you want to resolve conflicts, this is the time to do it. When women ovulate, think about when they're pregnant, they just glow. So if you work for somebody and you want to ask for a raise, this is the time to do it, right? So you say yes, ask for what you need. And it's a really great time to step into those hard conversations, because you're going to manage it better. Your nervous system is going to support you. It's going to flow really well. So if a conflict comes up in premenstrual phase or in the premenstrual phase here or in menstruation, park it. Say, sorry, I don't even have enough testosterone right now. Can we schedule it for next week? So even here, you can start having the hard conversation. Don't have them here. It's not going to, you're pushing up against nature. Of course, if it's something really important, then you can apply all of the effective boundary communication tools. but it will be best and flow better in spring or in summer. So then when we get to premenstrual phase, autumn, or the waning moon, also, this is a no. This is starting to slow down, requesting support. This is when we ask for help. This is when we complete tasks, we stay focused, and we just finish off projects so that we can go into our retreat again with new moon or in winter when menstruation starts again. Does that all make sense? Yeah, makes sense. Imagine if we all flowed with this calendar and we engaged and collaborated and communicated, flowing with what is naturally flowing within us. So another way to look at this is new moon, winter, introspection, quiet time, meditation is good, self-nurturing is good, being internal, be highly sensitive, be kind and gentle with yourself. Watch the really hard self-talk in that time. Intuitive, connected, listen deeply and journal. During spring or the waxing moon, you're energetic, inspired, refreshed, feeling confident, active, constructive, social, connecting to others, create concepts, connect. In full moon, feeling fabulous. This is in summer and ovulation, sensual, confident. There's clarity in decisions. You're magnetic, powerful, actions and intentions. That's the time for actions and intentions. And then autumn, your luteal phase or waning moon, highly sensitive again, easily triggered. So pay attention to that. You're reflective, you resolve internal and external conflicts, and you come into balance again with heightened awareness. So that brings us to embodiment, the inner summer, the outer summer, flowing with your menses and using the magic of that cycle. And all of this in the sacred container of boundaries. There's a wonderful saying by Brene Brown that says, daring to set boundaries is having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. The number one reason a lot of women tell me they don't set boundaries because they don't want to disappoint others. Just checking in with a question from Morel. When you name the seasons, what do you really mean? The part of the year? And if so, how does that relate to the monthly cycle then? When I, hold on, let's go back. What I mean by the seasons is kind of, it relates to that type of season. So when you're in menses, for example, it's winter. You want to have cuddly clothes on. Your temperature is normally like a little bit lower. You're wanting to go inwards. You're wanting to go into rest state. So when nature goes into winter, it's a rest period. It slows down. It's quieter. Does that make sense in terms of the cycle and the seasons? Yeah. So it's really just understanding that is, you're going through that in 1 month, what the year does in 365 days. Yeah. Okay. Yes, so disappointing others. Sane, how does it work in menopause? Right. So in menopause, you start following the moon cycle. So if you can remember where you used to bleed, where your menses was, either new moon or full moon normally around there, that's where you kind of like start your cycle. Because either way, the moon really affects us, right? The moon has got a magnetic pull on the earth and it affects the tides. And so we're 80% water. And so the moon cycle flows also in a 29.5 day cycle, and it's exactly the same. There's a period of winter, there's a period of spring, there's a period of summer, and there's a period of autumn. So you can just start following the moon once you're holding your blood within and really honoring that power within. That makes sense, Anne? Great. Any other questions? You're welcome, Sonia. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye. Any other questions? Great. Now, if you'll allow me to, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the Boundary Baseline online program. So for 20 years, I've heard this from women who really, that there's this golden thread of why we struggle with boundaries. And a good couple of years ago, I decided I can't keep repeating this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this Healthy Boundaries Masterclass. And it ended up being really super successful. And so I ended up now offering it online as well. So this is a 6-week program in which you can confidently shift from overwhelm, fatigue, and frustration into fierce freedom, clarity, and thriving relationships. Yes, with pleasure. I'll share the recording. Have a beautiful day, Diane. Okay. And so this, I called it the boundary baseline because ultimately what we want as our baseline is a really very clear space and line about what is okay with you and what's not okay with you. And what I really noticed with a lot of women stepping into boundary work is because of a lot of conditioning, we never ask ourselves, what do you want? What are your rights? What are not your rights? And a lot of boundary courses don't dive deeper into the boundary story and really look at ancestral stuff that comes up for us. They also don't dive into embodiment. And so we want to engage with boundaries from the sacred feminine perspective. We start this program on full moon, the 3rd of July. So we start in the cycle of the full moon where we start celebrating. At the end of this program, you're going to get very, very clear on what is okay and what's not okay for you. We'll discover why exactly you have boundary struggles and how to overcome it. There's generalized boundary issues with women, but there will be unique, specific ones to you. You'll learn how to set boundaries with ease and grace and clarity. You'll learn how to effectively communicate and how to navigate all of the hard questions. You'll learn how to stop abandoning yourself for the sake of others. And you'll start living, loving, and leading from that authentic, beautiful you. In module 1, there's 3 modules. We'll identify your boundary style. Where are you on the spectrum? Normally, boundaries are either super rigid. If you've been hurt a lot, you will build walls around and armor up the heart. And so your boundaries will be too rigid and you won't allow all of the beautiful things or relationships to come into your life. Or you have porous boundaries where you have no boundaries. And normally that comes with everybody coming to you, you being completely drained, exhausted, and resentful. And it normally comes with a lot of drama. Then we'll discover the 6 different types of boundaries. We will work with your inner child to heal your boundary story. And then we'll uncover blind spots. Very often we have subconscious blind spots. And that then starts helping us to actually understand why we struggle with boundaries. The good news is you normally have one area of your life where you're really good with boundaries, but there will be other areas where you really struggle. And so we're really going to look at those and see why you have blind spots for it. So the good news is in one area, you already know how to do it. So it's applying it, but really understanding why you struggle in the other areas. In module 2, we're going to really dive deeply into what matters to you most, what you stand for and what you don't stand for. We're going to identify triggers. What are your specific triggers and how to deal with that? Then we're going to really step into the practice of cultivating compassion. And then we're going to clear all the boundary blocks. In module 3, we're going to dive into core values. This in itself is super valuable to really, really understand what are your core authentic values. Because once we've cleared the boundary blocks, now we get to the core of what is most important to you, and that is expressed as a value. And from the value, that's where we start setting all of our boundaries. When we clear on our core values, we extend our boundaries outwards, and then every decision that you make becomes very, very easy, and you don't spend a lot of time and energy to struggle with those decisions. We'll also learn effective communication tools, and I'll share with you scripts of how to have the hard conversations, how to say no to certain people, certain situations, until you find your own language. We'll have tools on how to navigate hard conversations, and then we're going to write a new boundary story for you, a new empowered story. What you will get is downloadable worksheets, video tutorials, supported guided meditations, which you can keep in your library. We'll have weekly live calls where we'll get together, we'll share breakthroughs, and we will share, we'll celebrate the breakthroughs, but we'll also share the tough stuff that we're dealing with, and I'll answer all your questions and answers. And also just to connect, to be together on a journey and experience that magic and wonder that happens when women circle. You'll have lifetime boundary tools, and we'll do all of this in a community of aligned sisterhood, rising together. So the investment for this program is €295, and it starts on Monday. And of course, there are payment plans available. And if you have any questions, or you would like to hear more about it, or you have any threshold guardians that are stopping you from attending, please connect with me. Ask those questions. And as always, I want to really thank you for listening, for taking the time to be here with me, to share in the Sacred Feminine Rising together. And my intention for you is just to live, love, and lead from your feminine core for a braver, more compassionate, and connected world for all.